It has been an entire calendar year since Secret of the Mimic came out, and when it first came out, a bunch of us in the community were spamming out videos to try to figure out this game and get every theory and angle we could. And since then, we've only discovered more and more evidence. But after all these theories and speculations and recaps, the question remains, a year after its release, how close are we to actually solving what the Secret of the Mimic is trying to tell us? Can it be solved? Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. I think what makes the most sense for a video like this is to just go over literally everything we know and don't know about Secret of the Mimic. So we'll start with the most direct information, the most agreeable and easily proven direct story of Secret of the Mimic. And before you scoff and be like, is a recap really necessary for the plot of the game? This is Five Nights at Freddy's. The plot of the game is often barely comprehensible. Like, look at Help Wanted 2, look me in the eyes. Can you honestly tell me with 100% certainty what the plot of Help Wanted 2 is? Because I can't, and I've done this for a living for like 5 years. I don't know if we're reviewing security tapes or going through the mind of Cassie's dad. I don't even know if we are Cassie's dad. So in this franchise, it's helpful to go over what direct plot lines we may or may not have. So that being said, what is the direct plot line of Secret of the Mimic? You know, after I abandoned the idea of having dry shoes, this place isn't too bad anymore. Although, man, is it expansive. I feel like I keep walking around in circles. Oh wait, this is new. A sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Free Cash. Look, this is a FNAF channel. I know for a fact that each and every one of you in some way likes to play video games. What if I told you that you could make some side money by doing that exact thing while you're already playing games anyway? Free Cash is an app for both iOS and Android, where you can sign up for free and make money just by playing games on your phone. I know, it sounds too good to be true, but it's not. Free Cash even has a 4.8 star rating with over 290,000 reviews on Trustpilot, which is honestly insane for a platform like this. I was actually pretty skeptical at first, but after trying it myself, I can see why so many people use it. It's straightforward, and the system actually tracks your progress and rewards you properly. And the best part, if you watch until the end and sign up with my link, you'll get a $10 bonus. All you have to do is make an account, look for a game that seems fun, enable app tracking, and let Free Cash reward your account for your progress. I personally tried it with games like Raid Shadow Legends and State of Survival, and it was pretty fun just grinding them normally while actually getting rewarded for it. Then when you're ready, withdraw what you've earned. I chose to withdraw to PayPal, and I've already made $65, which is basically free money for me. And what's cool is you're not limited to one payout option. You can also cash out via Amazon gift cards, bank transfer, crypto, and other gift card options depending on your country. Want to earn some money by literally just playing games? Sign up to Free Cash via my link today. And if you use my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen, you'll get a $10 bonus on the first offer started. The bonus is only available through my link. Don't miss your chance. This offer is only valid in these listed countries. And depending on your country, the interface may look different, but the functionality is all the same. Thanks again to Free Cash for sponsoring today's video. Well, when I get out of here, I guess I can treat myself to a nice dinner. Let's keep moving. We play as Arnold, a Fazbear employee who's told he's being sent to Murray's costume Manor to collect whatever the late Edwin Murray was working on for the company. When we get there, we find the main thing Fazbear wants to collect is the Mimic, an endoskeleton that's able to put on any costume and pretend to be any character. The problem is it has some, quote, homicidal glitches, so you have to be careful. But clearly the idea of a mimic is invaluable to Fazbear Entertainment. They could basically replace all of their animatronics with one animatronic, or at least one on a mass scale. And while we're there, we learn more about Murray's costume Manor and what led to its inevitable downfall, all the while avoiding the mimic in various costumes. And at the end of the game, we learn that the voice we'd been trusting from Fazbear, Dispatch, very soon into the game was replaced by a separate iteration of the mimic. The first iteration, actually, M1, versus the thing that's been chasing us through the hallways, M2. The three endings of the game give Arnold three different outcomes. In one, he gets the schematics, but is tricked by M1 into handing them over, thinking that he's giving it to Dispatch. Once he leaves the facility, the actual Dispatch reprimands him for giving away Fazbear property and fires him. But it gets worse, because apparently the mimic hid in our van and kills us, stuffing us into a prototype Freddy suit. He dies not even knowing what he did wrong. The second ending, which many people, myself included, believe to be the canon ending, is what happens if Arnold tried a little harder to figure out what was going on. Presumably in this ending, he's realized that Dispatch isn't Dispatch anymore, and instead of handing over the data diver which had the schematics on it, he activates parachute.exe and escapes out of the security office, going deeper into the facility to find out what's actually going on, finding a prototype Freddy Fazbear's Pizza underground, and encountering F10N4, the computer console in which M1, the voice he's been talking to, actually resides in. She tells us that her plan was to obtain the mimic schematics and get them to Edwin Murray, so he could then repair M2 and turn it back into her son again. Her son, David Murray, who's also dead. So we travel through a tunnel system to the manor, and we try to do that. We try to find Edwin by getting into his office, only to find that it's been blown up. And when we get there, it's revealed that Edwin Murray was caught in an explosion caused by the mimic sabotaging whatever he was working on. We then instead activate something called cradle.exe and try to get out of there. The mimic giving chase, but we manage to make it to our van, fending it off from the mimic and what I'm going to call the mimiclings. Cause like, who knows what they're supposed to be called? I like the mimiclings. Feed us, we're the mimiclings. However, he doesn't get away fast enough. M2 is on top of the hood of his car, causes him to crash, and then in the burning rubble of his car, M2 walks up, takes the data diver from Arnold, and leaves him be. He doesn't care about Arnold. He wants the data diver with the mimic schematics on it. He then walks into the woods. The third ending is equally important to the story, but insane. After getting every collectible, you're able to beat something called moon.exe, an old text-based styled adventure that sees you doing weird esoteric metaphors about what the mimic is and what it means to its family. It eventually becomes Moon at some point. Regardless, doing that gives you the glitched permission, which allows you access into the other rooms of the actual home of Edwin Murray. In those rooms, you can collect Storytime tapes and put back together the Storytime machine. Activating it with the White Tiger plushie you get at the beginning of a New Game Plus playthrough, you then get to stun the mimic by playing a Storytime in the voice of his mother, Fiona. Stunning him long enough, you can take the data diver and repair the mimic like Fiona wants to. And it works. It reverts back into David, takes his plushie, goes to bed, and shuts down. It seems perfectly docile this way. And that's the full direct story. Arnold, sent by Fazbear, is trying to collect the mimic schematics. He does every time. The question is, which ending is canon? Does he give it back to M1 and is caught and killed? Does he try to escape but is caught by M2? Or does he successfully repair the mimic? I think it's the second option. But if that's the direct story, what's the deeper story? What's the undercurrent of what's going on here? Well, the subtext of this game is not only the origins of the mimic, but how Fazbear obtained Murray's costume Manor and how William Afton has direct hands in it. So let's start with that titular secret of the mimic. There's a good amount of secrets in this game, so exactly which secret is the secret, that's hard to prove. But it's most likely the fact that after all of this, we found out the secret of the mimic is that there's at least two. As we mentioned, there's M1 and M2. M1 was the first iteration of the mimic, and over time it primarily copied Fiona's personality, under the instruction of Edwin for the mimic to take care of David after Fiona Murray's death. Edwin seems to believe that M1 is possessed by Fiona in some way, but that is just speculation. However, after the death of David Murray, M1 was then unsatisfied. Her entire job as a robot is to watch after David Murray, so without a David Murray, she has no purpose. She brings up to Edwin that all he has to do is make another mimic. Then that mimic can pretend to be David, and she can watch over David again. There's a bit of a confusing moment here, because in the logs we find, he never is okay with this. He says it's a bad idea, he says he never should have done it, and he doesn't want to do it. He never should have made Fiona, he's not going to make David, it wouldn't be right. But we have audio logs of the mimic pretending to be like David, and Edwin beating it senselessly for it because he can't handle that as a grieving father. So at some point, either he did, or M1 went behind his back and made one anyway. It does seem, however, and this is mostly speculation, that M1 gave up its body for M2 to inhabit. We know from the various messages and logs that Edwin was not able to replicate the mimic. He made M1 and was successful, but no matter what he tried, he couldn't figure out what the missing part was for M2 to happen. He could not figure out how to make an M2. And if part of that is the endoskeleton, I could see a world where M1 instructs Edwin to make the F10 and 4 console for M1 to go inside of, to then let M2 use that body. That's all very speculative. I'm just saying it's unclear if there is ever a second endoskeleton. They look identical and we never see them in the same room. But like I mentioned, just like in the books, the sight of the mimic pretending to be his dead son is too much for Edwin to process, and he just beats the mimic senseless, rendering its legs useless. But what Edwin fails to consider is that the entire point of the mimic is it observes its environment and replicates it. So if you beat the thing senseless and break its legs, what do you think's gonna happen, Edwin? It's really giving, where's the robot, Mansley? Regardless, sometime later, M2 repairs its own legs and then sabotages something Edwin was working on, so it blew up in his face, literally. And in the rubble, Edwin calls M2 to come help and call for help, to which M2 responds, one of my favorite moments. Honestly, here, I'll let it play for itself. Here's my first reaction to it.
M2, respond. Emergency. Call for help.
Daddy's busy, buddy. Why don't you go outside and play?
So now we have M1, the first iteration of the mimic, trapped within the confines of the F10 N4 console. And we have M2 in the endoskeleton that can put on any costume, wandering the facility and murdering anyone it comes across. It's likely that M1 isn't aware that Edwin is probably dead, because she explicitly tells us to take the schematics to Edwin, and uses her last reserve power to directly talk to who she thinks is Edwin in the elevator of the mansion. So that's what's happening with the Murrays and the mimics. But there is a second undercurrent story going on here, the business relationship between the Fazbear brand and Murray's costume Manor. MCM was in dire straits. Edwin Murray's father, Edwin Murray Sr., was a brilliant businessman and was able to run this business efficiently. Edwin Murray Jr. was just the funny inventor guy who would make up fun ideas, and sometimes they were successful, but there's no pressure. Then his father died and he took over the company, and he clearly was not a businessman. He did make the Cleanovac, which was wildly successful and shot the business into profitability. And he was never able to make something that good again, and it slowly dwindled down into near bankruptcy. The main problem was anything else Edwin made would fail horribly, or hurt people and then result in lawsuits and returns. William Afton, the ever-shrewd businessman he was, saw an opportunity here. Fazbear already had a partnership with MCM. If he was able to buy up the company, instead of having to pay partnership fees, he could just keep Edwin as an engineer, keep all the assets, and just use them, thus beginning the process of William Afton undermining what was left of MCM to make them easier to buy, starting with the Fazbear contract. Something that, on the face of it, promised Edwin freedom of the bankruptcy, something that could fully save the company, an insane amount of money for an admittedly insane amount of work. The contract is never directly stated, but it seems to be a prototype pizzeria that can act as another showroom for MCM, all the while making a fresh slew of animatronics for Fazbear's new restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But not only was this project wildly expensive and time-consuming, anytime they became close to finishing the contract, William Afton would change it or tweak it in some way, getting a near-finished product and then telling them to change everything, deliberately wasting time and money, two things that MCM had no more of. And not only was William Afton doing that, but as conditions worsened, William Afton reached out to presumably one of the head executives of MCM and promised them a managerial position at the new branch of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza if they can get him a contact sheet of the entire staff at MCM. We know he got it because we have other messages from employees talking about how Fazbear keeps reaching out to them about a better job, better safety, better benefits, better job. And it was working. Employees bled from MCM at their deepest, most dire moment. So with the business crumbling under his feet, running out of money, running out of jobs, and running out of employees, Edwin Murray receives one more email from William Afton offering to buy up MCM. And if William wasn't the one assisting in the end of this business, it would be frankly a very generous offer. William Afton says, I'll buy up the company and retain all the rights to Murray's costume Manor, but Edwin Murray can keep his position as head engineer and keep living in the house that's on company property. That's frankly a great deal for someone who's about to lose everything. Now, we don't know what Edwin's response was. It likely would have been no. After all, we do have audio logs about how Edwin was sure that Fazbear was working against him, to the point where apparently his father said never to trust Fazbear. I don't know what that could possibly be about. Regardless, it doesn't really matter, because presumably around the same time is when M2 killed Edwin Murray. So William Afton bought up the rest of the company anyway, and the land it's on, which is why this land that looks strikingly similar to the land the Pizzaplex is on is probably the same land the Pizzaplex is built on 50 years later, and why right now William Afton is sending employees to go fetch the mimic before they go and sweep the rest of the place. So we've covered the main story and the subtext, the sub-story. If you played the game and paid attention, this is pretty much what you get. There's barely any speculation, besides some of the one-off mentions of speculation that I called out at the time. But this is Five Nights at Freddy's. We're here for theories. So within the year that this came out, what theories have arose from Secret of the Mimic, and have we solved any of them? Well, there are plenty of theories and plenty of places that this slots into and connects throughout the timeline. But the most important theories for the timeline of FNAF, I believe, are where the characters of Secret of the Mimic ended up, if any of them survived, and how much technology from Murray's costume Manor is things we thought William and Henry invented. So let's start with who's still alive in the timeline. Alright, I keep saying Edwin Murray is presumably dead. Why isn't he definitively dead? Well, the answer is twofold. For one, we never get direct confirmation that Edwin Murray is dead, and in a series where we have plenty of direct confirmation of deaths, that is worthwhile to point out. Not to mention in the books, he is alive much later in the timeline. But the second problem is the now infamous silhouette. Sometime after the game launched, Secret of the Mimic received a major update to patch a bunch of the bugs and glitches and make the game generally more stable. But unmentioned in the patch notes, and seemingly out of nowhere, there's a window that you can see from the security office across the warehouse that goes into the office where the digityper is. And in that window, they added a moving humanoid silhouette, which is crazy. It's throughout most of the game, and it can't be the Mimic or digityper because there are moments when the Mimic can't be in there and digityper gets destroyed within an hour and it's still there after. So it has to be something else. I've made a full video on just this silhouette in the past, and my findings were basically that it's either William or Henry, a brand new character, or Edwin Murray. I don't think it's William or Henry because Fazbear knows how dangerous this place is. No way would William and Henry roll up willingly. I don't know if it's a new character because there's literally no way to know if a character we don't know exists. So for the time being, I'm shelving that, which only leaves Edwin Murray as our third possibility. Not to mention that digityper office is fairly nearby Edwin Murray's office if you go through a path that we can't access in the game. And there's an exit door pointing in that direction. So Edwin Murray could theoretically be going in through that exit door, but we don't have any way to know. So the question for is Edwin Murray still alive? Maybe. Moving on, what about M1 and M2? Well, they're robots and they don't age, and we know for a fact the Mimic endoskeleton is still around by the end of Ruin. And at least one of the MXES consoles is also around because we turn it off at the end of Ruin. So it's nearly definitive that M2 is still around. M1 speculation is much more mixed. Some people believe that M1 eventually becomes Glitch Trap. I tend to believe that Glitch Trap manifested after the Mimic schematics in the Data Diver are scanned into Help Wanted, making a new iteration of the Mimic, which then leaves M1 as a question mark. That being said, I then believe that M1 is the AI in charge of controlling the Pizzaplex, but that's really heavy speculation. So M2, for sure, M1, somewhere, which then leaves the final question of who's still around being at David and Fiona. Obviously, they've died, but the question then is, what about their spirits? Is there any supernatural possession going on? At this point, with the evidence in front of us, it's mostly up to personal interpretation. The game leaves it purposefully open-ended, so you're never sure if something is a ghost or a robot acting strange. The game does, however, purposefully go out of its way to tell the player that Edwin at least thinks that Fiona's spirit is still around. I tend to believe that David's spirit is still around acting as the White Tiger, a sort of playful spirit that isn't necessarily trying to kill people, but it's trying to play with people that enter its room and accidentally killing them along the way. As far as Fiona, I'm hesitant to say Fiona's possessing anything. M1 never acts enough like Fiona for a possession to fully make sense. I way more believe interpretations like FNAF's theory, that the mimic overheard Edwin wishing and hoping that Fiona was still around and talking about how he needs her to watch David, and the mimic, like it's said in commercials before, knows what we want. So it then began to pretend like Fiona was still around, acting as though M1 was possessed by Fiona, in the best way it could. I would watch his full video on the evidence for that, because there's a lot of really good evidence pointing that way. So all in all, as far as are any of these characters still around, I would say Edwin is a maybe, M1 is a somewhere, M2 is a yes, David is a maybe as a ghost, and Fiona is a probably not. But then what about that other question? How much of the technology we've known from Five Nights at Freddy's was made by William Afton or Henry Emily, and how much of it was just stolen from Edwin Murray? Possibly the biggest impact Secret of the Mimic has on the entire FNAF timeline is establishing exactly where William gets his materials for the beginning of it. And I'm mainly speaking about the buildings we see FNAF unfold inside of. For example, the house on the hill in Secret of the Mimic bears a striking resemblance to the FNAF 4 house. Enough of it that I'm willing to believe after cleaning up the fire damage from that explosion, a simple renovation turned it into the FNAF 4 house. Or the fact that Murray's costume Manor is almost definitively built upon the same lot that eventually the security breach Pizzaplex is built on top of as well. But those are surface level. Literally, it's on the surface of the ground. What's more speculative, yet way more useful for the timeline, is what's underground. It's common knowledge that Sister Location is some sort of underground bunker. After all, we take an elevator all the way down to get there. Now, many people believe it's canon that it's a part of the FNAF 4 house, or at least attached to it. It's never directly stated, but it does seem likely. Regardless, a weird part about it has always been, how did William Afton get that much money to build an underground laboratory next to his house in the early days of the timeline when it was just like Fredbear's Family Diner? It ain't that successful, dog. Edwin Murray was at one point a wildly successful inventor and used that money to make these underground laboratories directly connected to the house that becomes the FNAF 4 house. All William would have to do when he bought the property and Edwin died is renovate it into the FNAF 4 house and the Sister Location bunker. The infrastructure was already there. He just had to change what it was being used for. It goes even deeper than that, because what do we find underneath the security breach Pizzaplex? The FNAF 6 fake pizzeria, something that a lot of us have been struggling to figure out why it suddenly sunk into the ground. And then Secret of the Mimic gave us an answer. It was never above ground to begin with, because what do we see underground on the same plot of land that the Pizzaplex is built on? A fake pizzeria with enough surrounding rooms to build the exact traps we see in FNAF 6. Just like William renovated the laboratories to become the Sister Location bunker, all Henry would have had to do is renovate the FNAF 6 pizzeria into a trap. After all, he was involved in the project. He knows for a fact it's there. And the fact that both these locations are connected via tunnel means that in Ruin, when we're escaping FNAF 6 and running through caves, there's a chance that the scooper we've encountered is the Sister Location scooper. We're just now seeing it for real for the first time. But that's just buildings. What do we know about the animatronics? One of the largest worries that a lot of FNAF fans had after playing this game was that initially it seems like it's saying that William and Henry didn't invent any of the animatronics, and they were all made by Edwin Murray, this guy we've never heard of before. But that's not quite true. First of all, the main FNAF cast, the Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy we see at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, are not finished. They're not even halfway done. They are barely at the prototype stage. So even if they use these prototypes by Edwin Murray, that would be like saying if I laid the foundation of your house and then like the outline for the walls for the first floor, and then you built a 2-story floor, that I built the house. You know what I mean? Not to mention the chance that they didn't use these prototypes at all. And then there's the Springlock suits. The things that infamously caused a lot of things to die in Five Nights at Freddy's. Was that also Edwin Murray's fault? Well, no. We see Edwin Murray's Springlock suits in Secret of the Mimic, and they're way safer than anything we've seen prior. I mean, Arnold falls multiple stories within a Springlock suit and easily gets out of it. He's fine. Meanwhile, William Afton puts on a slightly damp one and brutally dies for like hours. So because there's a huge difference of these suits, I think they're just that, different suits. Edwin Murray made some, but the ones that were used by Fazbear were made by William and Henry. So reviewing all of this, it seems like even though a lot of the buildings used by Fazbear were inherited from Murray's costume Manor, the technology itself was still William and Henry primarily. So that's the game, its story, and some of the theories that we've made so far. The question still remains, what don't we know about Secret of the Mimic? What haven't we been able to solve in the year that we've had this game for? Well, it's mainly mysteries that just need more information. Like, where does the Mimic go between Secret of the Mimic and Ruin? We know it starts in that FNAF 6 pizzeria and it ends up back there, but surely it wasn't there the whole time. Did Fazbear use it at any point? Why is it damaged by the time of Ruin? Furthermore, where is M1 now? I said that I believe she's the AI running the Pizzaplex, but that's basically just speculation. Many people think she's Glitch Trap, and there's valid interpretations for both. And we still don't even know the significance of Sun and Moon, a now very important character because in Moon.exe, we literally become half of it as the Mimic. So clearly this thing's important, but we don't know why. So most of the mysteries that we have yet been able to solve, like most FNAF mysteries, are things we just need more information for. There was no way to solve what was going on in FNAF 1 before at the earliest FNAF sister location. To really solve it, you kinda got the gist, but if you wanted answers, you had to wait. But all in all, Secret of the Mimic has been an incredibly helpful game for the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, helping to iron out a lot of the weirdness of the very beginning of the timeline, all the while being, frankly, probably the scariest mainline FNAF game we've ever gotten, which is why even a year later, I love the game and love going back to it. Meanwhile, I only go back to Security Breach for challenge runs, like this one, which you can watch right now. And don't forget to use my link in the description to sign up for Free Cash today and get a $10 bonus to your first offer. Thanks again to Free Cash for sponsoring today's video. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #ToastArt. A huge thank you to our wonderful patrons who help support this channel in lieu of fluctuating ad rates at YouTube. And a special shout out to our breadwinners of the week, Madison Esmond, Marks, Sam Pinnell, and Westward Meadowlark. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.